What's up everyone, my name is Ken, welcome to my channel. I know it's been a long delay since my last video, work's been busy, and a lot of personal circumstances got in the way of making this video. What was supposed to be a 1-month break turned into 3, so sorry about that. But now I'm back with the final version of Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends KS tier list. Just a quick note, I won't go into too much detail about how to play each character. If you want an in-depth breakdown, please check out my Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends Chaos Pressure Testing playlist, link in the description below. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more. The main difference between this tier list and my last one is that this one allows the use of customized third weapon. This means that characters with a terrible fourth weapons like Xing, Sun Jian, Taishi and Liu Bei gets a massive damage boost in exchange for losing the 1 rage token per 100 KO bonus. Some characters will benefit much more from this than the others, which I've marked down for you. Additionally, I've restructured this tier list with more levels to further differentiate each character and how good they are on Chaos. The same rules from my last tier list still apply to this one. The only two restrictions are no fan bodyguards and no skipping officers after the encounter dialogue. Fan bodyguards are too overpowered because they give you infinite healing, which defeats the entire purpose of Chaos. The point of not skipping officers is to make sure you don't rush the enemy commander while ignoring every enemy officer on the way to him. Picking the path of least enemy officers leading to the enemy commander is still completely fair game though. Other than that, horse combat is allowed, rage token is allowed, and eating the extremely rare meat buns on the map is allowed. Each character is evaluated based on their performance on a 5-star Chaos stage. Now that the explanation is over, let's get straight into the final tier list. Unsurprisingly, Liu Bei is still the best character in the game. His C3 is God tier and can be abused for freezing and Musou filling. His C1 is unflinching and can be used to reach an officer inside of a crowd right before Musou. His square string has one of the best range in the game. With a custom third weapon, the difference between the 3 horsemen is extremely small now. They have the best defense in the entire game and you don't even need to dismount to win the battle. The ideal third weapon is heavy, with attack, force and fill. Zhuge Liang is also included in this tier because he has the highest potential for damage in the entire game with his Musou. His jump charge filling method still has some defensive flaws that others in this tier don't suffer from. In most stages, he is not as defensively good as Liu Bei or the Horseman, but in stages with multiple hyper officers like in Mount Qi and Baidi Castle on Wu side, he should theoretically be better than Liu Bei. Nothing much has changed for Ling Tong from the last video. His C4 is basically a faster but less abusable version of Liu Bei's C3. His biggest weakness is Musou ending delay, which can be negated with C1. Still an extremely good character and the best freezer in the entire game. Wei Yan didn't have any change in weapon setup either, but I realized that I did not give him Wind Scroll in my last tier list. With the increased range of Wind Scroll, his C3 became much more abusable and became the second best C3 in the entire game for filming and freezing, only after Liu Bei. Xing is basically Wei Yan without token chaining. With Wind Scroll, her C3 and jump charge cancel combo works in all situations for filming Musou and freezing. She also has one of the highest damage juggling Musou in the entire game, thanks to a better third weapon to replace her garbage fourth weapon. Xing gets a massive boost in damage, making her one of the best characters in the game. Some of you may be surprised to see Meng of all people be placed this high in the tier list, but trust me, he deserves it, because his C1 is unflinching and jump charges aren't affected by weapon weight. Meng is extremely compatible with heavy third weapon, giving him a massive boost in damage. Also, his true Musou ending gives 5 extra hits, so always equip him with Way of Musou and don't bother freezing because his Musou hit rate is low and C3 is unsafe with a heavy weapon. Dong Zhuo and Sima Yi didn't have any change from the last tier list, still taking advantage of their overpowered fork weapon and high Wushou damage to token chain their way to victory. They both feel primarily on horseback, since their ground charge attacks aren't that abusable. But Dong Zhuo's C5 and Sima Yi's C4 both work if you use light orb. Nothing has changed for Zuo Ci from the last tier list either. He's still the most versatile character in the entire game, with the biggest toolkit to work with. C1 as the crowd approaches, C4 to fill Wushou and freeze, and jump charge escape. He also fills Wushou extremely well on horseback, and he has the strongest shuffling Wushou in the game. Xiao Yun, like Zuo Ci, is another jack of all trades, with an unflinching C1, a 360 C4, and a C5 that's unblockable in a duel. His normal Wushou ending can be unsafe, so beware of that. Cao Ren didn't change from the last tier list. C3 for filling from distance, and light orb C6 and jump cancel for filling in close range. I've also heard people say that you can fill safely with a heavy weapon if you turn your back during the third square hit, but I never really got the hang of it, so I can't speak on that particular setup from my personal experience. To me, his fork weapon works just fine, good non-juggling Wushou damage. Zhang Liao also didn't change, C6 for filling and freezing, but only during rage. He has a juggling true Wushou, which pulls him down to the bottom of this tier. At the bottom of this tier is Xiahou Dun, whom I admittedly underestimated in my last tier list. Fill and freeze mainly with C6, sometimes C3. His Wushou hitbox is quite fast and requires a lot of practice. Also, if you use C3, make sure that there are no enemies on your left side. In my last tier list, I slightly overestimated Da Qiao's potential on 5-star Chaos. Though she's still definitely good enough to clear every stage on Chaos, she has to abuse token chaining to get through harder stages like Struggle for the Book and Mount Qi. Without rage, her fork weapon is too slow to be safe in massive crowds, especially with her C6, which is her best freezing tool. Sun Jian and Liu Bei are two peas in the same pot and play almost exactly the same on Chaos, with C5 and C6 respectively. Compared to characters in the tier above them, they are held back by terrible fork weapons, but with custom hurt weapons, they lose access to token chaining, which makes them struggle hard on Mount Qi. Gan Ning's placement remains the same from the last tier list, but in my opinion, he does improve with a custom hurt weapon at the cost of no token chaining. Use C5 for filling, but right before a Wushou, C6 is better because it has a decent chance of freezing your enemies. Also, it's unflinching, so don't worry about pre-charge delay. Huang gets a big boost in damage with a heavy third weapon, but is still a weaker version of Xing and Wei Yan. His jump charge is very reliable and versatile in filling, dueling, and escaping, but his C3 with heavy weapon is too slow to abuse for freezing. His Wushou suffers from a low hit rate, and with his unreliable freezing, his offense speed is considerably slowed down. Zhong is a weaker version of Dong Zhuo and Sima Yi. Like them, she fills Wushou mainly on horseback and spams her very high damage Wushou. Unlike them, her fork weapon is trash, and with a custom third weapon, she loses access to token chaining. Yuan Xiao also plays very similarly to Sun Jian and Liu Bei, but his filling method with either C6 or C3 and jump charge cancel are less reliable. He also has the most unsafe true Wushou ending among the three of them. Nuwa can be extremely difficult to play, but even at her best, she's still more defensively unsafe than every character above her. Fill on horseback or with light orb C1, run away and spam her true Wushou. She is completely carried by her good fork weapon, so abuse the hell out of token chaining. Outside of rage, Cao Pi probably doesn't deserve to be in this tier, but thanks to his phenomenal fork weapon, he barely makes it by milking his rage tokens. Without rage, his C5 is his best filling and freezing tool, but you need to release a C1 as the crowd approaches for it to be safe. His promotion to high tier was definitely a pleasant surprise for me. Calling this tier mid can be a bit misleading. because we're actually approaching the bottom half of the roster. For some context, every character in the 3 tiers above this are 100% guaranteed to clear every 5-star chaos stage in a somewhat reasonable amount of time, under 20 minutes per stage. However, starting from this tier, except for Pang Tong, Zhang Fei, and Xuan Ji, not every character is guaranteed to be able to clear every stage on Chaos anymore without a fan bodyguard. Or, if they can clear it, they'll have to resort to very cheap tactics, such as running around in red health and spam their true Musou. First, let's start with Pang Tong. He has one of the most convoluted Musou filling methods in the game by spamming C1 and flying away with his jump charge. This makes his offense extremely slow, but compared to every character below him, he's still more reliable. His Musou is very peon-oriented, just like Meng, so the game plan is to kill every soldier surrounding an officer and then dueling said officer. Zhang Fei is a much weaker version of Xing Kai and Ling Tong. His first 2 square hits have ridiculously short range, and although his C3 is good for freezing, the rushing sequence before it can be pretty unsafe in a big crowd. His slow running speed also takes away 1 weapon slot or item slot for a speed increase item, but he's still barely good enough to clear every stage in the game without a fan bodyguard. Lu Meng, on the other hand, is the worst version of Zhang Liao. Just like Zhang Liao, he has a juggling true Musou, but on top of that, he also suffers from having no abusable charge attack and having a terrible 4th weapon, which takes away his ability to token chain. This means he'll struggle a lot when in red health. Zhou Yu is a jack of all trades like Zuo Ci and Cao Ren, with alternate options for filling from a distance and at close range. However, he's worse than them in every conceivable way, with a slow C1, unsafe freezing options, and a mediocre juggling Musou. Guan Yu suffers from slow running speed like Zhang Fei and is even less safe to use. His square string has a poke right before his C6, which has a massive pre-charge delay. This renders his fast charge attack extremely unsafe. However, he does make up for it by being very effective during rage. Xuan Ji plays like Pang Tong, but she's slightly weaker and less versatile. Unlike Pang Tong, her C1 doesn't feel Musou, and her jump charge isn't as good as an escaping option. Her square string is definitely better, but it doesn't mean much because her range is still bad, and she has no abusable charge attack. The only way to clear Mount Qi for her is to run around in red health. At one point, I consider Yue Ying to be the 2nd best female character in the entire game, and even better than Xing Kai. A lot has changed since then. For a mid-tier, she's definitely one of the safest characters to play, thanks to her long-range horizontal square string. However, her best freezing method with C6 isn't super accessible, and her Musou damage is ridiculously low for having such a high hit rate. Overall, she can be considered a worse version of Huang. Fu Xi is another safe character that I previously overestimated, thanks to his unique infinite jump charge cancel loop. However, since the last tier list, he has been demoted because many characters have surpassed him thanks to a better equipment setup. Fu Xi's weakness, on the other hand, revolves around his terrible Musou hitbox, which is internal and cannot be fixed with any equipment. Lu Xun, on the other hand, faces the opposite problem. While there's nothing wrong with his offense, his defense is ridiculously flimsy without a rage token. But during rage, he suffers from a juggling true Musou, so token chaining doesn't necessarily suit his playstyle either. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. Sun Quan suffers from the same problem as Lu Xun, like a bad defense and juggling true Musou. But unlike Lu Xun, he doesn't even have the option of filling Musou from distance with a jump charge. His Musou filling method is less reliable than every other Zone commander, making him the worst variant of this clone moveset. Finally, we have Xiao Qiao. Like Fu Xi, despite having a very safe Musou filling method, she suffers from having a garbage Musou hitbox, but in her case, it is so much worse. Her Musou is widely regarded by the Dynasty Warriors 5 Stream Legend Chaos community to be the hardest Musou to hit with, and that really brings her position down in the tier list. Starting from this tier, harder stages like Struggle for the Book and Battle of Mount Qi become almost unclearable on Chaos. And if you can clear them with any of these characters, you're a much better Dynasty Warriors 5 player than I am, and 99% of anyone who has ever played this game. Let's start with Jiang Wei. the worst polearm character in the entire game. While you could make an argument for him being mid-tier, I think his lackluster defense and low damage offense justifiably puts him right here. With a third weapon setup and a short Musou bar and high field, he's more defensively sound, but his offense speed that wasn't great to begin with would decrease even further. Even with a better third weapon, Taishi is still a disappointment to play. His jump charge filling method is all offense and no defense. Every time you attempt to fill Musou is a gamble with death, and chaos difficulty is already hard enough without it. He had the potential to be mid-tier if he didn't have a juggling true Musou, which absolutely ruined whatever potential his moveset had left. On the other hand, Huang is all defense and no offense. His C1 and C3 filling methods can be reliable with enough training, although he still struggles in stages where enemy troops are scattered sporadically, like My Castle and Mount Qi. That said, his extremely low Musou damage pulls his rank down even further. It pains me to put Cao Pi this low, but his moveset has too many defensive flaws. His C5 is his best tool for filling, and C6 is best for freezing, but they both have massive pre-charge delay. His Musou hitbox is very janky against the frozen opponent, and his normal Musou ending is extremely unsafe. He's also one of the few characters in this game to still struggle against multiple officers even during rage. Guanping follows right behind for having the most unsafe 3 Musou ending in the entire game, making him a terrible token chainer. His Musou hitbox is also too low to hit a mounted officer, which makes him extremely weak against them. While his C4 is more defensively sound for filling and freezing than his slow and short-range C3, it also scatters enemies everywhere, making it harder for him to lead a crowd. Shanghai did not change much from the last tier list, but I did get better at playing him. His jump charge is still the most reliable filling method, and his Musou hitbox and juggling true Musou is still his biggest weakness. Sun Jian slightly improves with a medium weight third weapon and light orb setup, but her juggling Musou damage really suffers from this weight decrease and the lack of freezing, which puts her down this low. These are the bottom of the barrel, the worst characters in the entire game that require an enormous amount of skills to play on 5-star chaos. These are the characters that justify the use of fan bodyguards, because without infinite healing, their movesets aren't viable otherwise. Dianwei makes the top of bottom tier, thanks to how effective his C5 is during rage, but outside of rage, he's a miserable mess with slow running speed, terrible fielding options, and mediocre Musou. Diaochan is technically a worse version of Taishi. It's a lot harder to land her jump charge safely because your vision to the ground gets cut off momentarily. Her Musou is also juggling, as opposed to being grounded like Taishi, and her Musou hitbox is absolutely terrible. Suzhu can fill Musou with a C4 and jump escape combo in a small crowd, but can be easily surrounded due to his turtle running speed. He also suffers from a terrible Musou hitbox. His slow attacking speed warrants the use of a lightweight weapon. Just like Dianwei, Huang is also only good during rage with his C5 filling and C6 freezing. But outside of rage, he has one of the most useless movesets in the entire game. I tried to use his C1 like Pangtong C1, but it doesn't work because the bomb also hurts myself. While his Musou hitbox isn't as bad as Suzhu, if you miss the hit before the Musou ending, it can be dangerous. Xiahou Yuan is basically Huang Zhong if you take away everything that makes Huang Zhong's range moveset works. His running speed is below average, he has no escape move, and he doesn't even have a reliable way to freeze because his only functional charge tag is C1. Zhang Jiao can fill primarily with his light orb C3 but has nothing else going for him other than that. Like Pangtong, he also has a broken square string. His Musou is trash, and both his normal and true Musou ending are completely unsafe. Finally, we have Sun Fei, who is too severely crippled by his short range that he can't make anything in his moveset work. C4 seems like the best bet, but the 3 squares before it is unsafe, and sometimes you be surrounded even after jump cancelling. Same story for C5. Even during rage, his short range still makes it easy for enemies to hit him, so he can't even abuse it like Huang Gai and Dian Wei. And unlike every character above him in this tier list, Sun Jian doesn't even have a functional horse moveset, which officially makes him the worst character in the entire game. And that was it for the final tier list. This video marks the official end of my involvement with this game. Thank you so much to everyone who has kept an eye on my channel in the past year. While I won't make more content on Dynasty Warriors 5 in the foreseeable future, I'll keep an eye on the comment section to see if you guys have any questions and suggestions, especially about this tier list. After this, I'll make a short playlist on Soul Calibur 3 where I'll show you how to clear Chronicles of the Thorn. And after that, we'll switch back to another Koei game, most likely Samurai Warriors 2, but unfortunately, I cannot give you guys a precise timeline for when this will happen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace!